This lesson really applies to those who brought in a canvas. But even if you don't have a canvas, this is still a good skill to learn how to do. The first thing you want to do is actually tape the sides down because you want to leave those sides pure white. So at the end of the painting, you are going to be peeling the tape off, which is satisfying and it keeps the edges clean. You want to make sure that when you're putting down the tape, you leave a little gap so that it's not all the way up to the edge, but part of the corner or bevel is exposed. And then you just want to make sure that you press down firmly so that there are no air pockets, that it is coming into close contact with the sides of the canvas there. Once you have it taped, you want to flip to the back side and write directly onto the canvas your name and your class period. And I would do that with a Sharpie. So for your tone, I like to pick colors that are similar to the colors you might see in sherbet ice cream. So pastel colors. And I always look at my reference picture. Usually what artists do is they go opposite to the colors seen in their reference or seen in actual life. So if you have an ocean with a lot of blues and greens, then you want to think, what's the opposite of blue and green? Orange on the color wheel. And that's why I'm doing kind of a peachy note, because the reference picture I was looking at had a lot of cool colors in them. So you want to go opposite. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it'll actually do a couple of things. It'll brighten your work. It'll unify the piece automatically from the get-go. And it'll also be easier to see where you've put paint on top of the tone and where you still need to put remaining paint. When you're doing a tone, you paint thinner than you normally would. So I'm using a little bit of water to kind of push around the paint. I think that brushwork is important. So the direction of your stroke, I like to go kind of crazy erratic. So I do kind of like an X pattern and I push it around. I'll also do some vertical strokes there too. What I don't want to do is create a pattern where every stroke is exactly the same. I want to push it around and get some energy to the tone itself. I also want to make sure that I'm using the same thickness everywhere, that I don't have it built up super thick in one area, because you don't want to paint on top of thick paint initially. You want to paint thin at first and build your way up with subsequent layers. Especially on a tone, you want it to be somewhat transparent. And the point of the tone is so that we cover up the glaring white of the canvas. It's hard to figure out how dark a color is when you put it on top of a white surface. It's much easier to get a true indicator of the value and temperature if you have a colored surface. And you want to think about the color. If you were to take a black and white image of that color, it should be in the mid-tone range. So I guess I'm saying you don't want your tone too light and you don't want it to be super dark because you want to see your drawing on top of it. And you want to make sure that you're painting all the way up to the edge. You can see I'm actually getting a couple of different colors within the tone. I'm using yellow and pink and white, but there are some areas where I'm intentionally letting it be a little bit more yellow or a little bit more pink in places. And that's okay. I think it's kind of fun to make it look almost like a tie-dye, like there's some vibrancy before you even put down the first true brush stroke of the painting. I'm picky about the sides of mine, so I just make sure I hit up those sides too so that they're not just left white. Now I'm going to take some time to draw in a rule of thirds grid. Now I'm not requiring this, but I will tell you right now that this is a very helpful tool. At the very minimum, it would be good for you to figure out where those 4 hot spots are on your canvas, because that's where you'll want to put your focal point. I'm taking the width and I'm dividing that into thirds, and I'm going to take the height and also divide that into thirds as well. And then I connect up the lines to create kind of a tic-tac-toe grid. This is something we've done before when we were working with charcoal, and it's something that I advocate for when you're painting. Not sure if I mentioned this, but I'm using Vine Charcoal. Vine Charcoal is an excellent tool. Not sure if I'd recommend Vine Charcoal on paper, but on canvas it's great because if you need to wipe it off, you can very easily just by brushing it off or taking a wet paper towel and it's gone. I still would say draw lightly, just like I'm going to say that to those of you who are working in pencil.